Whenever we go out to eat, for example, I don't bring my phone. She doesn't either. I mean, we don't have kids, so maybe one day when we have kids, we'll bring our phone. But
no, probably not.
Yeah. So we don't do the phone stuff at dinner. When we're not working or during our kind of work hours, we won't talk about work. And then if I slip up, because she never slips up, she'll just be like, "We're not talking about work right now." And then we actually work in different places in our home office. We have 2 different separate rooms.
Awesome.
So like our team, we're all on Slack, and then like my wife and I are on Slack. So like I'm talking to her on Slack, and she's on Slack, and I'll send her a direct message. But like creating sometimes that like space division, it wasn't always that way, but creating that is helpful because then after work there, it's like you both come home, you know.
Yeah.
So it's nice.
That's good.
So do you both now leave work and meet in the kitchen?
Yeah.
How was your day,
well,
darling?
the commute was, woo.
Yeah.
This is the WP Elevation Podcast, helping WordPress consultants elevate.
Hey, this episode of the WP Elevation Podcast is brought to you by WP Elevation. Well, more specifically, it's brought to you by a bunch of our happy customers. See, frankly, I feel a little bit awkward telling you how great WP Elevation is because you're probably not going to believe me because WP Elevation is my baby. It's something that we started over 3 years ago. Of course, now we're a team of coaches and mentors, and we have hundreds, and by the time you're listening to this, probably thousands of members all over the world. But it still really is something that I'm very passionate about. And of course, if you join WP Elevation, we make revenue and we make profit. So it's a little bit awkward if I tell you how great it is, because you probably think I'm just trying to sell you on it. And partially I am, because I know how beneficial the program is. So what I'd love to do instead is just introduce you to some of our customers. So if you go to wpelevation.com/thepodcast, all one word, you'll be able to hear some of those stories from our customers and hear for yourself how WP Elevation has impacted their business and changed their lives. I hope you enjoy that, and I hope you check it out at some point. Right now, let's get back to the podcast. G'day folks, Troy Dean here from WP Elevation and Rockstar Empires, and I'm very pleased to have with me Christina Romero and Justin Ferriman. Hey dude, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, how are you, Christina?
I'm doing well. Next to Justin.
Justin is here from LearnDash, which is the fabulous learning management system that we use here to power our WP Elevation and Rockstar Empires websites. We thought and it's also the day before WordCamp US, which is kind of a big deal in the WordPress space. So we thought it'd be fun to get you in and ask you some questions.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us. We know that you're not well, so good on you for putting on a brave face and being here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Now, for those that don't know, I've had you on the podcast before. We've done quite a few video calls before. I met you in Chicago a few years ago. For those that don't know, what's your background and how did you end up in the learning management system plugin space in WordPress?
Sure. Before getting into WordPress and doing what I do now, I was a consultant setting up e-learning programs and learning management systems at Fortune 500 companies. And actually, you know, WordPress had always been a hobby at the time. And it's funny, I was working on a project and we were talking about what LMS are we going to choose, learning management system. And I was going over some of the options. Somebody mentioned open source, and a popular one is Moodle. It's an open source LMS. So I just kind of thought, I wonder if there's a one for WordPress. So later that evening at the hotel, when I was done with work, I was looking at the plugin repository, and there was nothing. So at that time, I was like, that's kind of a cool idea. I set up a blog and just started writing about the concept, and put it in a little email form where people could sign up to learn more. And I'd write about WordPress, learning management, then also just e-learning, and it's a passion of mine. And there was a lot of interest, so I was talking with my wife, who co-founded with me, and we were like, we should do this, we should give it a shot. And so we started to go through the process. You're about to be attacked. There you go.
Keep rolling.
Yeah, so we started going through the process of getting it developed. I don't develop, I don't know how to code or anything, neither does my wife. So we started that process, interviewing firms and people that could do that for us. And about 10 months later, after doing some market research and assessing if there was something we wanted to do, we pulled the trigger, and that January of that following year, we launched. And I was doing both my consulting career and LearnDash for 4 months until I had to just make a choice. At that point, I was going to be discovered probably at some point that I was working these two things, because I'd be working all day, consulting's 10 hours sometimes, and then go back to the hotel room and just work on LearnDash. So that was 2013, And I left my consulting career in 2013 and haven't looked back.
Awesome.
So it's been great.
Did you ever sell LearnDash to some of those Fortune 500 clients?
No. It's funny. I remember that first year, I got an email from UPS, and they were like, "Hey, what's this LearnDash? Can you tell us more?" And I was like, "Don't worry, don't buy it." It wasn't mature enough at that point to be an enterprise learning management system for a huge company like UPS, and I knew that. So yeah. So no,
And they
I
asked
haven't.
the question not knowing that this was your product.
Yeah, well, they had found me, I think, or
Oh, I
a
see.
representative is doing research, much like I was probably doing
Yes,
back in when I was consulting. I'd send an email. So no, I haven't actively tried to sell it to them, but maybe one day.
How did you get through 10 months of market research? Like, I can't get through 10 minutes of market research before I pull the trigger on something. How did you play the long game?
Yeah, in the beginning, it's probably like an insecurity thing. You don't know if the idea is good, so you keep going back and looking and trying to revalidate. So starting off with the simplest way that we all market research, we just Google, I just said WordPress LMS, and nothing came up. So I was like, well, that could be good or bad. And, so then I started writing about the concept. And when people were saying, oh, this is cool, or I see some people sign up on our email list, I was like, oh, okay, well, then something's resonating. And then once, it was funny, during that time that I started the website to get the project going, and in the beginning it was called wpelms.org. It was a site, and I was like, I have a better name than that. And then for a little tip, if you can't pass the radio test, scrap the name. So I was thinking, like, if this were on the radio, how would I, if they're like, go to wpelms.org.com, so I tried to make it as easy as possible in that regard, and LearnDash just kind of came to my head as like a learning dashboard.
Was there any hesitation with not being a coder? Was there any moments that you kind of you doubted, getting into the plugin space with not really being a coder?
Not entirely, because when I was doing my consulting, I was kind of a go-between. I was creating e-learning for very technical things. So I'd have to go to the people that were developing these technical things in my company and take what they were saying and translate it for the end user. So I already was used to having those conversations and creating wireframes and all that stuff. So I just kind of viewed it as the same. I was just trying to find that firm or person that was going to be at the time. So that was part of the market research, was like, who's going to build it? Is there competition? And competition did come, actually, scary competition.
Pretty quickly too.
Yeah, before we had even launched, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with WooThemes. Before we even launched, it was in the fall, and we just started building it out. And WooThemes said, oh, they're going to create a theme that was like a learning management theme. I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of some overlap, but not a big deal. And then they came out like a month later, and they're like, we're changing it to a plugin. And I was like, oh no, I mean, at first, when you first see that like the biggest name in the industry is coming out with a competing product, it's scary. But it's also validating. So at the same time, I was like, well, if they're doing it, then it's got to be good.
Yeah.
We launched about a week apart. They got the market first, naturally, because they had the resources, but we came out a week later.
Is there a free version in the repo, or is it you just buy the premium version from your website?
Just premium.
Right.
That was out of necessity. I was consulting. I didn't have time to support free users.
Yeah, of course.
It was just, if you want this product, you can buy it.
Yeah.
It's kind of old school, but it works for us. And I know there's the freemium spaces. It works for a lot of people, and I know there's a science behind it, and I just didn't have the time to learn it.
So I have a question for you, because it's one thing that I love about LearnDash that you don't get even with a lot of these learning systems that you pay for, is the gamification element that you can do with LearnDash. So you can integrate with other third parties to create the gamification. Did that play in at all? Because you were consulting, so you kind of knew a lot of e-learning strategies. Did that come up? It's part of the roadmap?
It didn't initially. So it came about a little bit later. I did know from when we were setting up our e-learning programs, and we weren't doing any fun courses like the stuff like Rockstar Empires or anything. We were doing like compliance training, new protocol. And so a lot of these employees didn't even want to take the training we were creating. So you had to figure out ways to encourage people along. And we would do it in small ways, like with quizzes or checkpoints or things like that. And they get like a little certificate, and some people put it in their cubicle or something. But that was part of it. And then the gamification industry evolved involved with the LMS industry, so they had cooler things like badges that can fly on the screen and points and sound effects and stuff. So when that was kind of evolving, I was just, my finger's always on the pulse of the industry. So I thought, we should get this in. We need to get this in. And we were actually the first WordPress LMS plugin to get it in. And certainly everybody has gamification now, but at the time it was kind of educating people what this is and why it's good.
And you made a decision to be able to integrate with a lot of other third-party apps like BadgeOS and Memberium, and why not just build all those into your product rather than integrating with third-party apps? Was that a strategic decision to try and tap into their audiences as well to grow your user base?
Yeah, certainly to tap into their audience would benefit us, but more I was thinking along the lines of just sticking with what I'm good at. Right. The jack of all trades is seldom the master at one. It's slogan that's thrown around way too much, but it resonates with me. So e-learning is my thing, learning management, courses. If somebody's creating a really kick-butt gamification like BadgeOS, and they integrate with Credly or Mozilla Open Badges that people can then take in their digital backpack on LinkedIn or wherever, let them do that, and then we'll just tap into it. It's kind of like the whole concept of Zapier, where you can tap into all those apps just by going through their API.
Yeah. What's the biggest challenge you've had in the last 3.5 years now it's been going? What's the biggest pain in the ass thing that's happened?
Biggest.
Just one.
Just one. Wow, yeah.
Coming here with the flu.
We had this guy named Troy Dean.
Yes. Drag me out. Gave me a water bottle.
He was blowing up my support.
That might be true.
It is true, actually. That's how we first met. Actually, was in the support forums. I didn't know who Troy was at the time, and he asked a question in the forums, and I was in there, and I responded, and it was a little back and forth, and I just didn't think twice about it. And then Troy came back and said, like, hey, we took what you told us, and we had one of our developers tweak something in the code, and he donated it back. And I was like, oh, cool. So we took that and tweaked it in our own way, but that's how it all started
because
off.
That's right, because initially there was a button so you could have a button to buy a course, but it was only available on the course page. And I wanted to use that button on a sales page. I wanted to build my own sales page, right? So we basically built a plugin for LearnDash which allowed you to take that and turn it into a shortcode, which you could then use on any page on your website, which would give them access to that course if they bought it. Yeah. And it was the first time we'd contributed anything back to another company, right? Because I'd seen this happening all the time, and I'm like, and I just felt so good that we'd solved the problem, and I also felt so good that the founder of the company had been in the support forum supporting me. I'm like, you know what, I'm going to give this back to this guy, because I actually feel really good that he supported me. And that was the start of our relationship.
And here I am. But to answer your question, I think, does it have to be specific on the product or just running a business in general?
Yeah, sure.
The first year was extremely hard, especially when I made the jump, disconnecting from work. And I actually think like I became, during 2013, maybe less creative. And the reason I say that is because the brain's a muscle, right? So if you're working out like an athlete, if they're training for a game or an event, they can't train, and then go to the game and perform at their optimum level. They have to have a rest time. I think I was just so amped up, I was like, all right, this has to work. I don't want to go back to the consulting world. But that was a huge challenge, separating work and life. From a business standpoint, I think there's challenges. Sometimes I think we all come across people that, they're having a bad day. And when software doesn't work, it's so frustrating. I know, it happens to me too. So when people come out and say like, you need to fix this ASAP, or get on the phone with me as soon as possible, or I'm going to go on Twitter and tell everybody how terrible you or your company is. And when they say your company, it feels like you, because that's so personal. It makes them for some hard days or hard conversations, and to just take a step back and try your best to be diplomatic. And I'd say 99% of the time it works. There is that 1% that can't be saved though, and it's just. Yeah. What are you going to do?
Yeah. Do you find a shift in lifestyle since you were doing the client work, the consulting work, the one-on-one, and then shifting to this sort of productizing with recurring revenue?
Yeah, I love products. before obviously my time, everything was attributed to my time, and products are, what's great about products is like you can do the smallest thing and not even know it's going to have an impact on your bottom line, and suddenly it just takes off like wildfire, and you're like, whoa, I didn't know that. So I'll give an example. We had LearnDash, well, in 2013, we just had LearnDash, and we're like, we should add like a reporting functionality, a little bit more advanced reporting. Or we were talking, my wife and I were talking, like, we should get some more reporting, what kind of reports we want to build in, and we already had some. And we're like, well, why don't we make it like a more advanced reporting and make it an upsell or something? So if somebody wants that, they can have LearnDash and have a lot of the reports, but if they want some more advanced reporting, then they can get this. And I think the difference, I think it was like $30, or at the time it was $20, or something like that. I think I might have even pre-sold it for 10. Like, going back, I probably wouldn't have done that now. But we say, oh, limited time, and it's just like, all of a sudden, like wildfire just started picking up. And like in the product space, in the service space, you can't really do that as much. But in the product space, it's like we had this idea, we put it in there, and now we have these 3 tiers of pricing, and there's a reason for that. You see so many companies do that. They're always trying to get you to go to that middle tier. And if we didn't have the reporting or the licensing aspects to differentiate those tiers, then we probably wouldn't. Then our revenues would be more down at the lower tier, but they're not. People go for the middle tier.
Yeah. You preach the middle tier.
Yeah. We've been talking about the middle tier a fair bit today. I just want to actually take this.
I swear I didn't know that.
I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for everything you've done with LearnDash, because we were about to relaunch WP Elevation last year. We closed the doors on our membership site and we were repackaging it up as a course. And we were trying to work out how to take it to the next level. And so we closed the doors and we had like 2 months to build a solution. And like literally the week after we shut the doors, I discovered the social learner for LearnDash
Great
theme through the guys at Buddy Boss. And I sent it to my business partner. I said, this is it. This is what we have to build this on. We relaunched WP Elevation in September. It completely changed our business and it changed the community. And these guys will attest to that. And then we launched Rockstar Empires in June this year, which is nuts.
I know, which is nuts.
I feel like I've been doing this for years. Like it's crazy. And they're both built on that social learner for LearnDash theme with LearnDash at the core. Yeah. And we've got WP Elevation consultants in Rockstar Empires now learning how to build Rockstar Empire style courses for clients. So, man, your work and your team's work has had a profound impact on our business and on my life. So thank you very much for that, man.
I'm happy that I played a small part.
Yeah, big part. I do want to take some questions from our
Before you
audience.
ask the audience, though, he did mention working with his wife.
Oh, yes. He did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. How does that work? How does that go?
It was hard at first. I was always gone. I was gone 4 or 5 days a week with consulting, and then when that changed, I was home all the time. And she was in grad school at the time, and then so we were like, well, do you look for a job, or do you want to just start doing LearnDash, or how about you do LearnDash? We'll do some support and stuff. You can look and see if you want to get into it. And so she was like, oh, I'll just start with LearnDash. I'll look for a job that never happened. She just stuck with LearnDash, and so happy she did, because she's like, whenever I come up with ideas or something, she's the filter. I'm kind of one of those people that like I just throw stuff out there, and then she can be like, no.
That sounds like something I do.
So, but it's difficult at first, and I think part of that, my challenges I was talking about in the first year of never being able to turn off. If you work with a significant other, that's very important. If you're all work all the time, then there's not much else.
So what are your rules? What are your rules?
Roles?
Rules.
Well, now, whenever we go out to eat, for example, I don't bring my phone. She doesn't either. I mean, we don't have kids, so maybe one day when we have kids, we'll bring our phone. But
No, probably not do that.
so we don't do the phone stuff at dinner. When we're not working or during our kind of work hours, we won't talk about work. And then if I slip up, because she never slips up, she'll just be like, we're not talking about work right now. And then we actually work in different places in our home office. We have 2 different separate rooms.
Awesome.
So like our team, we're all on Slack, and then like my wife and I are on Slack.
right,
so like
right.
I'm talking to her on Slack, and she's on Slack, and I'll send her a direct message. But like creating sometimes that like space division, it wasn't always that way, but creating that, it's helpful, because then after work there, it's like you both come home, So it's nice.
That's good.
So do you both now leave work and meet in the kitchen?
Yeah.
How was your day,
Well, the
darling?
commute was, woo.
Yeah. We've got a question here from Jason Resnick. Any plans for more detailed reporting?
Not anything specifically. So when we just launched Pro Panels, that reporting add-on, or that little add-on I mentioned before. We just released 2.0 of that not too long ago. And part of that was, and in LearnDash, was restructuring the database and stuff to see make it easier to make custom reports. And the idea was kind of like, all right, we're going to make it easier for people to make custom reports, because actually we've been told in the past by developers, like, hey, I created this cool little report, but we didn't get as much of it because at the time it wasn't as easy to do. So part of it now is, now that we got that out, is like, okay, let's see what people are doing with the data, what are they requesting. We do keep our finger on the pulse for data around, quizzes, what people want in there. We've added some extra reporting that I actually neglected to mention in some of the announcements, but we are keeping, not track on, we do have a timer on the quiz, for example, but we're keeping track of time on course, so you can get that data, see how long individual users are on a course or how long it takes them to complete it, which is great for certifications, especially at like state agency levels that need that kind of stuff. So reporting is always an interesting game, like data and reporting, because like what matters always changes. So we try to keep up with that the best we can. But if you have ideas, just send them our way, because we save that stuff. We don't put lip service when we say like, oh, thanks for the idea. We're like, oh, this is good. Boom, we have a folder and we put it in there. We bounce it in our Slack group to get immediate feedback from our team. So,
any ideas for building custom reports?
There's a few tools. I forget it. I forget the name of it, but. If you circle back with me, perhaps I'll remember the name, or I'll look it up online. But yes, the short answer is capturing more data and putting into like the report exports that currently exist in LearnDash should probably be the easier thing. But there's also different like applications that you can take the data and put it into like this really cool dashboard outside of WordPress, which is something we're kind of thinking on with the REST API anyhow. But
what are some of the challenges with scaling support?
If you don't set expectations, and I think you were talking about some of that anyhow in your mastermind, then you put yourself into a weird situation. So in the very beginning, like I had like a generic thing about not the privacy policy, but the terms or whatever, terms and conditions. My advice is be as strict as possible on those, because then you're always over delivering. We do a lot for our customers, but like if somebody has these crazy server issues, it's kind of out of our hands, but we'll try. But have a fallback on that, and then have multiple points of contact. So like we started with tickets only, and then we went to forum only. Now we have both. We used to then guide people more towards a forum and still have the help desk. Now we're switching it and guiding them more towards the help desk, but have the forum. So it's a constantly evolving theme, but it's like you get more support requests coming in. Forums are cool because people donate suggestions and ideas, but they are also incredibly hard to know how well you're doing, because there's no real cool metrics things. We had to build our own custom plugins for bbPress to be able to treat posts as tickets and send them away, but you don't get all that data like you would in Help Scout or something like that.
Yeah. Did WooThemes release Sensei in competition to LearnDash?
I'm going to say no, because they weren't calling it a WordPress LMS at the time. I was the only one calling it that. And then now, if you Google WordPress LMS, you'll get themes and everything. So I'm going to say no. I don't think I was on the radar in the least bit. But
from a consumer's point of view, I was researching WordPress
course
plugin,
or something,
right?
Yeah.
And the whole online course scene was exploding in 2012. All the big online marketers were making truckloads of money selling digital courses. I mean, Udemy was exploding. Right. Lynda was exploding. There were all these platforms. Chase Jarvis started Creative Live. That whole movement was coming, and so it just made sense that the WordPress theme and plugin authors were eventually going to catch on. And LearnDash just happened to be the first one that I downloaded. I saw it and said, okay, we're going to take this for a spin. Downloaded it, used it, and just went, well, we're done now. Like, I don't need to try any of the others because this one's not broken, so I'm just going to use this. And I could see that
it wasn't broken.
I could see that it had some iterations to go through, and I could see that it had some improvements for sure, but it just worked out of the box. Is LearnDash really the easiest LMS to use for WordPress?
What we tried to do when we created it initially was to use as much of the standard WordPress way of doing things. So it's just custom post types. You can create a blog post, you can create a course, and there's been, I think most do that too, but I've seen others that don't, and they have like custom wizard pages and stuff. And I think that's just, it's almost like you have to learn another platform. So that helps. We use standard taxonomies, categories, all that stuff, and just some options on the page. So we have people that do come over and from competition and say, "Wow, you're so much easier."
Yeah.
But the bigger thing, the ease of use was part of it. The bigger thing was just being compatible. I wanted max compatibility, and meaning with themes. So like you could use any theme you wanted or any theme framework. And LearnDash, you could just slide it right in. So I was kind of obsessed with that piece, more so than like the ease of use kind of approach.
What are the future trends in the e-learning space?
So the e-learning industry is huge. It's blowing up. This past year, and it keeps growing in how much market worth it is. This past year, the driver of that growth was mobile learning. And think about it. We have our phones all the time, and tablets and whatnot. People aren't necessarily sitting and clicking through a course anymore. Mobile learning is just going to explode, and it's going to carry the e-learning industry. And we know this, and we're already making plans for how LearnDash can be part of that.
Interesting.
Nice.
Keep me in the loop, man. Where does LearnDash fit into the market today?
Yeah, that's a great question. Small to medium business for sure. I've been consulting for like 3M. Probably not going to be for 3M or Dow Chemical or any of those folks, but it's not a sense when I say it's not right for those folks, it's not a sense of the user, like the number of users, that's not the issue. It's just the complexities that are part of businesses and conglomerates that you need to accommodate for with the roles of these different, with employees and their training paths. So by way of example, digital marketer, Ryan Dice's platform, they use LearnDash, and they have tons of people going through courses, and they didn't really have a problem. So yeah, I think, but if it's going to be a traditional business sense, small, medium-sized business, for sure, I think is certainly a viable option. We get a lot of people coming over because they're paying $20,000 retainer fees on their LMS. And I'm thinking, man, how do I get a piece of that? No, but it's,
So that puts you back into the consulting world.
Yeah, I know. Pretty soon I'm doing the same thing all over again. Yeah.
Hey, if there was one thing you could fix in the next 7 days, what would it be?
Next 7 days?
Yeah.
Jeez.
I've got a magic wand behind here. I've been waiting for you.
We have like 8 things in the hopper that we haven't released. And because we're so obsessed with getting ProPanel 2.0 out, and we finally got it out, and then when you get it out, then you have to usually do a iteration or two. So now that we've got that done, it's the end of the year. But next 7 days, I wish we could just get all the testing done on those, so that when we hit 2017, we don't even have to do anything. We just select the calendar date, ship it,
Release
ship
it.
it,
Nice.
ship it. That would be great.
Awesome. Cool. Well, man, thank you so much for coming in and spending some time with us.
I'm safe.
Under the weather, I'm not going to shake your hand. Fist pump, eh? Fist pump. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Cheers.